Hey everyone! Okay, so the time has come to talk about my birth story. I really hope that I will kind of keep it on track and give you the information that I want to give you and, not veer off course too much. So I would just kind of go ahead and get started. So I was due September 7th of 2010 and August came in. By August I was really uncomfortable. I had gained a lot of water weight. I had carpal tunnel or pregnancy induced carpal tunnel. So because of the water weight and it pressing on like my nerves and stuff like that, like I lost like the feeling. My hands felt like they were permanently asleep. Like I couldn't get relief from them. And my doctor said that that's normal for some women, and that, your body in preparation for birth, it doesn't know that you're going to be in a hospital or that you're going to have fluids. So it'll hold on, for all it knows, you're going to give birth in a field. So it holds on to water. Some women hold on to it more than others. I held on to it a lot. Like my face was so swollen that like I would smile and it would be like, it was really bad. And I was just ready. And there's an old wives' tale that a lot more women tend to go into birth on full moons, because like the gravitational pull or something like that. And I didn't know, I didn't buy into a lot of wives' tales. This was just something that I had read. And statistically, hospitals have put out that they actually have more women in the hospital giving birth than other days. So I looked at the calendar and there was a full moon on August 24th and then a full moon like September 10th or something, like sometime after my due date. And I'm like, I really hope that I don't go late. But then at the same time I was like, well, if this is true, I don't want to go into labor. I don't want to have my baby on August 24th because, and this is like, I have a very good memory and, dates are tied to things, but August 24th was like the anniversary of me and my ex. So before my husband, I was with someone for 5 years and it was a very serious relationship, but it was also like, it ended badly and there was a lot of like pain and hurt from that relationship. And I'm like, I don't want to have her on that day because that's what I associated that day with. So I went, towards the end of the pregnancy, you have an appointment like every week to get checked. And I had gone to get checked like the week before. She had dropped, like she was in the right position, but my doctor was like, I wouldn't be surprised if you're late, you're a first time mom and, whatever. And I was like, oh, great. I don't know. Well, I had been having a lot of like constant pain. Contractions are usually like waves of pain. I had been having a lot of this constant cramping pain and my stomach was hard a lot and a lot of swelling. And my doctor said that it was fine as long as, when I went to bed at night and woke up the next morning, the swelling goes down a little bit. Well, over a weekend, the swelling wasn't going down. So I had called and I didn't get a call back, which was unusual. So, the weekend went by. Monday morning, I call again and I said, the weekend came and went and the swelling isn't going down. And swelling could be an indication of preeclampsia, which is not something that you want to have. And it can be a danger for you and the baby and you will need to deliver. So they said, come on in. We'll check you out, see what's going on. And a friend of mine was over at the house and she's like, well, why don't I just like drive with you? And I said, okay. So she drove me to the hospital and they hooked me up and they decided to like go ahead and check how dilated I am while she's in the room, which was awkward. They like spread my legs open and stick their fingers inside. And I was just like, we're close, but we're not so close that, but anyways, I was like 2.5 dilated, but and they tested me and they said, you don't have preeclampsia, you're fine, but you are contracting every 4 minutes. And I was like, really? Like, and they're like, you can't tell? And I'm like, no, I'm in pain, but I'm in constant pain. Like, aren't contractions supposed to be like pain and then relief and then pain and then relief? Like, I'm just in constant pain. And she's like, well, do you feel how hard your stomach is? And I said, yeah. And she's like, that's a contraction. I'm like, but my stomach is always hard. Like, it's not, like, my stomach isn't softening at all. So she calls my OB and they decide to keep me. And I've talked before that I wanted to go without medication and to do a more natural. I wanted to like be able to walk around and do these things. And I think like at that point, like I just got scared. I think I just kind of was like, oh, doctor knows best. And I didn't know how to stand up for myself more because they're like, well, we're going to keep you. And then they said they were going to put me on fluids. And to me, like fluids is like saline, hydration or whatever. So I call my husband. I'm like, hey, so they're going to keep me. I think we're going to have the baby. And he was like, what? And this is 2 weeks before. So this is August 23rd. This is a Monday, day before the full moon. And he was like, okay. So he like is rushing and trying to wrap up work. And they come, they put the IV in. Now I honestly can't remember if they asked for my permission to put me on Pitocin or if they just, that was part of like when they said liquids. I feel like they just did it, but at that, like, it's so long ago that I can't like distinctly 100% say that, but I know that I did not want Pitocin. And I know that I wish that I had been more educated when I went into labor because I feel like I kind of shut down and trusted the medical staff to do what was best for me. Well, Pitocin, which I talked about in my last video, if you haven't watched it, I'll link that below because I kind of explain that so I don't go off track in this video. But it increases your contractions. They come harder and they come faster. It's not how your body should naturally do it. So they start me on it, and then I could tell that then I could feel a very, like, the contractions were distinct and they were bad. And it was just like, it was crazy. And they asked if I wanted an epidural and I said no. And they're like, well, it's gonna hurt. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, I wanna try to do this without, you know, I don't wanna have the epidural. And they're like, well, do you want any narcotics? And I'm like, no, I don't want any narcotics. Like, well, I want narcotics. So I asked for a birthing ball because getting up and moving and, you know, moving your hips, it's supposed to help. It's supposed to help with the pain. It's supposed to help baby. Well, they wouldn't let me get up because they said that my heart rate and my blood pressure was really high and they needed to monitor the baby. And I was like, okay, like, so then that scared me. And, I did have to get up to go to the bathroom. And I remember that when I stood up, like the pain definitely like kind of like released a little bit. Like it still hurt, but I was just like, oh my gosh. Like I remember resting against the bathroom sink and I was just like, oh my God. And they're like, you need to come out. And I'm like, I'm still peeing, but I'm like just standing there, you know, like trying to rest. And like, we need to monitor you. I'm like, oh, I don't want to lay back down because it hurts so bad. And they asked me a couple times if I wanted an epidural, and I said no, like I don't want an epidural. I can do this. And then eventually, I just started to cry, like not because like I was crying, but my body was in so much pain that my body just started to produce tears. Like when the contractions would come, I would like breathe in and breathe out, and like tears would just like start coming down my face. And my mom and dad had showed up, And I didn't really want anyone there in labor because, and I did have this picture in my mind that I would be, you know, up and moving around. But at this point, like, I'm just strapped to the bed. And I asked multiple times if I could get up and move around, if I could sit in the tub, and they did not want me up because my heart rate was too high. And every time I guess I got up to go to the bathroom, my heart rate shot up even more. And, you know, my dad's like, she's in a lot of pain. Is there anything that you can do? And I'm like, no, Dad, like, I don't want to. And he's like, this is unnecessary, you know? And I'm like, Dad, like, I don't want an epidural. And, you know, the nurse even, she came in and she asked me again if I wanted an epidural. And she's like, you know, you're crying. We don't want to see you cry. You don't need to be in this amount of pain. I was like, well, if I could just get up. And she's like, we're really worried, you know, about your blood pressure and your heart rate. I'm like, well, can you check me and see where I'm at? At this point, I've been on Pitocin for 6 hours. 6 hours of hard, fast contractions. I was at a 3. So in 6 hours, I only progressed by a half. And I lost it. That's when my will crumbled. Like, if I would have been at like a 6 or something, then like progression had been made, you know? But I was moving at a snail's pace, and I looked at my husband. And, you know, because he'd been sitting there and I had been like clutching his hand, and they were, you know, they had been putting like washcloths on my head because I was sweating and hot. And I was just like, I don't think I can keep going. Not like, if I moved like half every 6 hours, like I couldn't do it. That was so discouraging because I can't even like describe the amount of pain that those contractions were causing. And he was just like, I understand. You know, before that, he was very supportive about me going without an epidural. But to hear that like I barely progressed in 6 hours with Pitocin was a really hard. It was really hard, and I was tired. I was so tired, and they don't let you eat. So my energy, like I had gotten there at like 2 in the afternoon. It's 9 o'clock at night. I'm just exhausted. So they order an epidural for me, and they had told me that the epidural would actually hurt less than when they put the IVs in, because they put the IVs in right here. And that hurts, like that really, really hurts. But when they put the epidural in, that really hurts. I mean, it's a needle, and I yelped. Like, I remember that I screamed out, and they were like, wow, we don't normally have that reaction. But they said it would take like a half hour for me to feel relief, but I felt relief a lot sooner than that. And I remember that, like, even just feeling a little bit of the relief, it was like I could breathe. Just having that relief was just like, oh my gosh. But then I had a side effect. I started to itch, and I started to itch bad. Like, I felt like there was like bugs under my skin or something. And so I would like I was scratching at my back, and my husband kept like swatting my hand because I started to like bleed, you know, but it was so itchy that I was like, I think I'd rather have the contractions back. Like I couldn't, like it was so bad. So then they were like, well, you know, you should try to get some sleep. And I'm like, sleep? I'm like itching like crazy. And my OB wasn't on call, and I like had specifically talked to her in my appointments, and I asked her like, how often do you deliver your babies? And she's like, I deliver 98% of my cases. And she wasn't going to be on vacation or anything when I was due, but I guess just that day she happened to not be on call. And I was like, no, she promised she'd be delivering my baby. And they're like, well, you know, she's not on call until 6 in the morning. And I'm like, she is delivering my baby. Well, they come in the room at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I have not slept. Like my husband's sleeping, I'm not sleeping. And they come in, they check me, and I've progressed more, but my water still hasn't broken. So they have someone come in to do an ultrasound to make sure that she's not breech, which means she'd be facing the wrong way. They need to make sure that she was head down, and she was facing the right way. So they went ahead and they broke my water. And so that was like 3 in the morning. By 6 in the morning, my OB was in the hospital. She came and she checked on me, and like I was almost fully dilated. She comes back around like 10. This is like a roundabouts, because this is really where it starts to get blurry. And I have not slept. It's been over 24 hours since I have slept. And she's like, you know, you're still not there, and it's getting to that time where we start to be a little bit cautious. And I was like, no, I need more time. I need more time to do this. She was like, okay, you know, and she's like, but you know, I'm just letting you know that it's getting close. And I was like, okay, but I need more time. So she leaves, and I start to feel my body push. And I can feel like the epidural starting to wear off, because like, and I literally can't control the pushing. My body just starts shaking, and I can feel it down there, and I can feel like the pushing. And so I was like, I'm pushing. I can feel myself pushing, and I can't stop. I cannot stop the pushing. Somebody needs to come and help me. So they come in and they check, and she's still not, like, my body is pushing, but she's still not dropped, like, down into where she needs to be. So they up my epidural, and it made me sick. Like, I like start to like dry heat. They come and they check me. I'm fully dilated. But she's not dropping. And a nurse comes in instead this time, and she takes my hand and she said, honey, it's time that we do a C-section, and you haven't failed, and I know that this is really hard, but at this point you've developed a fever, and that is an indicator that there's an infection and that there's something wrong. And with you having a fever, with how high your blood pressure is, with how high your heart rate is, that is a real concern for the baby.